As we already pointed out, there is still clearly a war going on in the Middle East despite the Ramadan and the end of it and the celebration of the Salah holidays. U.S. President Joe Biden called on Israel to agree to a 6 to 8 week ceasefire in its war against Hamas, signaling American frustration with the situation in Gaza. President Biden said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is making a mistake in his handling of the Gaza war and its repercussions inside Israel and internationally. A ceasefire proposal includes the release of 40 hostages being held in Gaza in return for 900 Palestinians from Israeli jails. Hamas says it's only analyzing the offer. Reacting to last week's killing of 7 aid workers in Gaza, President Biden noted it was outrageous Israel targeted the convoy of U.S. food charity World Central Kitchen. His call for unlimited food and medicine to be delivered into Gaza, saying there's no excuse for aid not to be given to people there. Efforts are still ongoing, however, to secure a ceasefire deal in the Gaza Strip, with the United States and Qatar acting as major intermediaries. During a White House press conference, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan pointed out that the Israeli government has taken steps forward related to the potential ceasefire deal. He has also reiterated the U.S. position that a massive ground attack of Rafah is not the best way forward.
We have seen Israel take some steps forward in terms of what they're putting on the table. And of course, we've seen the public statements from Hamas that have been, shall we say, less than encouraging. But I spoke with the Prime Minister of Qatar, Sheikh Mohammed, this morning. He does not yet have an answer from Hamas. I pressed him to try to secure an answer from them as soon as possible. And when we have more to report on that front, we will report it to you. I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals, but I will state here what I stated the last time I stood at this podium, which is that the United States does not believe that a massive ground invasion of Rafah, where 1.3 or more million people are sheltering, having been pushed out of other parts of Gaza that are now destroyed, into the area where humanitarian assistance comes in. This is not the best way forward. There are better ways to go after Hamas and Rafah. We presented those ways to our Israeli counterparts in a session we held last week. Our policy going forward is going to be determined by whether we see sustained follow-through on specific, concrete, and measurable steps to provide access, provide deconfliction, take other measures to alleviate the suffering of people in Gaza. And if Israel's policy doesn't change on a sustained basis in that way, our policy will change, and I can't go beyond that.
And U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been commenting on the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. During a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing in the U.S., Mr. Austin says the attack should be regarded as a war crime. He was responding to questions asked by Senator Roger Wicker.
What we witnessed on October 7th, Senator, was a horrific terrorist attack by Hamas.
Well, was it a genocide?
Well,
let me be more specific. When non-combatant Israelis were killed, when their families were burned alive, was that a genocide?
Well, Israel suffered a terrific blow when.
Okay, so you're not willing to call it a genocide? Was it a war crime?
It certainly is a war crime.
And when non-combatant Americans were taken prisoner by Hamas, was that a war crime?
All of that, the rape, the murder, the taking of hostages, of prisoners, all of that was a war crime. And that on October 7th, that was the war crime was entirely committed on the part of Hamas that day, was it not? It was.
And since that time, General, is it true that Hamas has, in violation of international law, placed civilians in places that they knew would be vulnerable to attack and used civilians as a human shield?
Consistently seen Hamas use civilians as
during the time since October 7 in Gaza, right?
That's right.
And that is a continuation of war crimes, is it not?
Germany has rejected Nicaragua's ICJ claims, saying it facilitated genocide in Gaza. Germany wasted no time presenting its case at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. The country's Director General for Legal Affairs accused Nicaragua of taking a one-sided view of the Israel-Hamas war. Germany was one of a number of Western nations that froze funding to UNRWA following Israeli allegations that some of its members were involved in the October 7 attack.
Initiating proceedings against Germany before this court has taken a one-sided view of the conflict. It fails to properly appreciate both the facts and the law in this situation. Germany firmly rejects Nicaragua's accusations. Germany firmly rejects Nicaragua's accusations. They have no basis in fact or law. Not once has Nicaragua sought information or even an exchange of view with the German government. Indeed, it has rushed to bring this case to the court on the basis of the flimsiest of evidence. Germany only supplies arms on the basis of detailed scrutiny, a scrutiny that not only respects but far exceeds the requirements of international law. Arms exports that take into account the security threats Israel is facing, in particular immediately after 7 October. At the same time, Germany's supply of arms and other military equipment to Israel is subject to a continuous evaluation of the situation on the ground.
98% of the licenses granted after 7th October do not concern war weapons, but other military equipment. Over 25% of this military equipment is destined for eventual re-importation and used by the German armed forces. 80% of the volume that was approved for export was approved in October 2023. Applications for export licenses are scrutinized by different ministries by reference to conditions that are more stringent than those under international law. As a matter of fact, only 4 war weapons have been licensed for export since October 2023, 3 of which concern test or practice equipment. Finally, as regards humanitarian assistance, Germany continues to provide humanitarian support every single day under extremely difficult conditions, constructively engaging with international partners.